right, welcome back, everyone. This is our final episode of the Leadership Renaissance, Cultivating Excellence. I can't believe that you've made it this far. It's unbelievable. So before we get started, you're going to want to have a pen and a piece of paper. You're going to want to have an app open, something you can take notes with. There's going to be a lot of information in the session. I'm going to use more slides than I've ever used in my life because there's a lot of information. Feel free to screenshot anything or screen grab it. It's fine. Don't worry about it. You've probably been doing it anyway. So now you have an easy conscience. Today, we are going to take a deep dive into cultural transformation. Now, over the past 3 weeks, we've explored a lot of different aspects of leadership. And I'm going to start by sharing my screen right away. Have you ever seen this slide? Have I ever shown the first slide? I don't think so. Anyway, this is part 4, lasting change. What we've looked at over the past 3 weeks are adapting to change and leading through uncertainty, building confidence and authenticity in leadership, and harnessing the power of storytelling to inspire and align teams. And it's really those 3 foundational ideas that we're going to use today to show you how you can shape culture change. So today we'll bring these 3 elements together, and it's going to be a comprehensive approach of catalyzing cultural transformation. And we're going to explore how to integrate dynamic leadership skills to create lasting change in your organization. Now, the journey that we take today, it's going to take us through understanding of integrated leadership models and culture change. It's going to help you assess your current organizational culture. You're going to craft a transformation strategy, or you're going to have the beginnings of what you need to craft a transformation strategy. And then you're going to learn how you can develop and implement a roadmap for change. So by the end of this session, you're going to have a really clear idea of what it actually takes for leading a meaningful culture change. And spoiler alert, it takes a lot. So let's begin right away by examining how the leadership skills that we've developed so far come together to drive cultural transformation. Okay, here we go. So first, one man band. There we go. Integrated leadership. This is a model for cultural change. It's a model. It's not the model. So there's a lot of ways to do this, but this is the one we're going to work on. So we looked at adaptive leadership. All right, that was the first week. That's the foundation of the model. And adaptive leadership involves anticipating and responding to change, fostering a learning organization, and encouraging innovation and calculated risk-taking. Now, there's a lot of other things, but these are the pillars. Authentic and confident leadership, which is what we worked on week 2, is about building adaptability. And when you're building on adaptability, we can add things like leading with transparency and vulnerability, aligning actions with core values, and inspiring trust through consistent behavior. Now, last week, we looked at narrative leadership, and you enhance your impact with narrative leadership through crafting compelling visions of the future, using stories to illustrate values and desired behaviors, and creating a shared language for change. Don't overlook that shared language, because that's what makes people feel as if they're a part of something larger than themselves. So these 3 elements, they intertwine to create a very powerful approach to cultural transformation. So in this first column, adaptive leadership, that provides you with the agility to navigate change. The second column, authentic leadership, that's how you build trust, the trust that's necessary to get the buy-in for these types of changes. And then finally, narrative leadership in this third column, that communicates the vision. And that's what engages the hearts and minds. All too often, you're going to see leaders, and maybe even yourselves, focusing on just one of these because that's what you're good at. And that's great. That's fantastic. You're good at that. Keep being good at it. But if you find that you're hitting a wall every now and again, if you find that you're having the same conversation or complaining about the same things again and again and again, chances are you need to start developing one of those other columns. But here's the thing. Before you can transform your culture, you need to understand where your culture is. So right now, we're going to do a quick assessment. Okay. This is where you need a pen, something to write with, something to compute with. You're going to have to add. I know I didn't say that was part of this, but you're going to have to do some basic arithmetic. So what we're going to do now is a cultural assessment questionnaire. All right. Let me share the screen again. All right. Oop. So this is the cultural assessment questionnaire, 1 through 5, right? So I'm going to show you a number of statements, and 1, you strongly disagree, 5, you strongly agree. If you like it the other way around, 5, you strongly agree, and 1, you strongly disagree. So if you like the positive first, Anyway, so the first thing we're going to look at is adaptability. So on a scale of 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, rate where your organization is. Number 1, our organization quickly adapts to change in the business environment. Okay, do they? And here's the thing, before we go any further, I want you to look at this from a very holistic point of view. Don't base your answer on 1 or 2 experiences you've had, or 1 or 2 stories that you know about your organization. You got to look at it from a whole. And no one's going to see what you write. Nobody. So be honest. You've got to look at this honestly and holistically. So grade that 1 to 5. 5, yes, 1, no. Number 2, employees are encouraged to experiment with new ideas and approaches. Yes, no, maybe, a little bit. And finally, failure is seen as a learning opportunity rather than something to be punished. So take a look at these. I'll have a sip of coffee. Oh, just delightful. Okay. Is everybody good? Yes or yes? Fabulous. Let's move on to the next one. The next one is about authenticity. Leaders in our organization consistently walk the talk, aligning their actions with stated values. Oh, let me pause for a second. Your last 3 answers, add that up and circle it. Okay, that's its own sum. Okay, so add that up and circle it. So for that slide, for adaptability. Okay, now we go here, authenticity. So 1 from 5, 1 strongly disagree, 5 strongly agree. Leaders in our organization consistently walk the talk, aligning their actions with stated values. Next, employees feel safe to express their true thoughts and feelings at work. Now, you can't speak for other employees, but you have a general sense of things. And what's your sense of things? And then finally, our organization values and promotes transparency in communication at all levels. Now, the all levels is the important part there. Okay? So take a minute. When you've scored each one, sum it up and write the total. So now you have an adaptability total and an authenticity total. All right. Let's go to the next one. Shared narratives. There is a clear and compelling story about our organization's purpose and direction that all employees can articulate. Notice that doesn't say they can understand, meaning if someone says, so what does your company stand for? What does your company believe in? All of your employees can articulate that, just like that. Number 2, success stories that embody our values are regularly shared throughout the organization. 1 strongly disagree, 5 strongly agree. And then finally, our organization's vision for the future inspires and motivates employees. The vision for the future inspires them, not the status quo. 5 strongly agree, 1 strongly disagree, or anything in between. Now, when you're done, sum that up. So you should have 3 separate scores. You should have a score for shared narrative, which you just did. You should have a score for authenticity, which you did before that. And then the first one, adaptability. So you should have 3 numbers. Now, this is how we're going to interpret those numbers. If you scored 12 through 15 in any category, that indicates a strong culture in that area. So that's great. That probably doesn't need to be changed. If you scored an 8 through 11, there's room for improvement. If you scored a 3 through 7, well, probably need some change in that area. All right. So this is a non-scientific poll, but it's what I want you all to get into the habit of doing. Assess the situation. Look at it from 1,000 miles up. Look at it from the ground. You've got to see, does something need to be changed? So now reflect on the scores that you looked at there. What are your organization's strengths? I wonder if I have a slide for this. I might have a slide for this. Let me see. Nope. Okay, so luckily I know. So what are your organization's strengths? That's a question you might want to ask. What are the opportunities for growth? Where are the opportunities for growth? These insights that you have, they think about them as we go through the day today. Where are your organization's strengths? Where's the room for growth? So as we move on through this day and we develop your cultural transformation strategy, you have those 2 things in the back of your mind. And then if you think about the responses that you gave to those questions, where do you see strengths? Where do you see opportunities for growth? And so sometimes you might say, okay, that's not a strength of ours, but I don't see any room for growth there. I don't think that's something that the company is willing to address. So now that you have a kind of an overview of where you stand, we got to develop a strategy for cultural transformation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a case study of a current client of mine at Siemens. Siemens, the tech company. Well, they're a lot more than a tech company, but not Siemens Food, basically. I'm going to call her Catherine throughout this case study. Because some of you might know who she is or whatnot. So I'm just going to call her Catherine. That's not her real name. Catherine is the CEO of a major business unit within Siemens. Siemens is a very interesting organization. They have their CEO, but then they have separate business units throughout the world. And each of those units has its own CEO. And then each country or each region in the world has their own CEO. It is a very complicated system of doing business. So Catherine approached me a little over a year ago. No, actually right about, or maybe a little less than a year ago. I forgot what month this is. And yeah, a little less than a year ago. And she had just become the CEO. It hadn't been announced yet. And her board, her leadership team, her senior leadership team, they had been their old guard and they're from all around the world. And they all know what's best and they could not align. And she wanted to take this $2.5 billion a year business unit and double their profits in the next 3 years. And she had a very ambitious plan of what she wanted to do. Problem was, her leadership team did not see her future. They believed that what she wanted to do, that's not what they do. And they all had better ideas. So she brought me in to help realign their team, to help them define their mission, their vision, and their values, to help them define their North Star, figure out how they're going to get there, and find the metrics of success along the way. And then also find ways to get rid of a lot of the siloed behavior of this global organization where nobody was really talking to each other. So we're going to use that as our case study as we go through how you can create a transformational strategy. Okay? Sound fun? Let's see what happens. All right, so the first thing you need to do, as I already showed you that slide, is you've got to define your desired culture. So what's the culture you want? What are the key characteristics of the culture you want to create? How does this culture align with your organization's mission and strategy? So if you're in your own business unit, does it align with the organization's mission and strategy? So Catherine, she envisioned a culture of innovation, collaboration, and calculated risk-taking. Those were her 3 priorities. Okay. Step 2, you've got to identify the gaps. So compare your desired culture with the current culture. So why aren't you there yet? And then what are the biggest discrepancies? So you can look at this the way that people tell you to pay down credit cards. Attack the biggest discrepancy first. Or maybe you need a small win. So let me go after the smallest one first. Now with Catherine, she identified a fear of failure and a lack of cross-functional collaboration. Those were the 2 biggest gaps. In her organization, people were so siloed they never talked to each other. Sometimes they went months without speaking to each other. And everybody was hyper-focused on what they had to do. That was stifling innovation and it was stifling progress because nobody talked. But the other thing was, it was a fear-based organization. Everybody was afraid of the boss. They were afraid to fail. And this is, a 180-year-old company. That's a long time to be afraid. So she wanted to change that, knowing that that's not going to change overnight. So that leads us to step 3. You've got to develop key initiatives. So what specific actions will help close those gaps? You've identified them, but now how do you close them? And then how can you apply adaptive, authentic, and narrative leadership to these initiatives? So what we've been working on these last 3 weeks and now 3.5, now 4 weeks, how do you actually apply those to achieve your goals? So what Catherine did was, wait, hold on, I'm sorry, there you go. There are more things on the slide. So now you have that if you are screen grabbing. Okay, so we're going to use Catherine's example of how she developed these key initiatives. Okay, so we're going to go into her journey right now, her transformation journey. And now keep in mind, it's a work in progress. I'm still working with her team. These initiatives that you come up with, if they were easy to do, they would have been done already. They don't happen overnight. And one of the reasons they don't happen overnight is because you're not always right as a leader. Sometimes your team will speak up and show you why their idea is actually a more efficient idea or might align better with the values of the organization. And so even though you think you know the right direction, listening to the other people in your organization is a good idea. So this is a work in progress. So let's take a look at what Catherine decided to do, okay? So her desired outcomes, again, were to establish alignment with senior leaders on the vision of the business unit. She wanted to improve cross-functional collaboration and communication, and she wanted to build a more resilient and adaptive workforce, okay? So what did she do? So for aligning senior leadership on the vision, first, she organized a 3-day offsite retreat for the senior leaders. So she brought me in, I went out to Germany, and we worked for 3 days on creating a vision for the future. Facilitated a collaborative session to define and articulate the business unit's vision. Now, defining is one thing. Being able to articulate, that's the narrative. If you can't articulate something in a manner that inspires people to move, it doesn't matter. It means that you understand it, but you can't create buy-in within other people. So that's where the narrative really takes the forefront. Now, the challenge that she faced was that she had differing opinions and a lot of resistance to change among the long-term executives. There were also cultural differences. She had team members in China, team members in Brazil, team members in Italy, team members in the United States, team members in Germany. Excuse me. So they had cultural differences in the way they did business and the way they communicated. So there was a lot of this going on. Now, the adaptation that she made to overcome these challenges was that she used storytelling techniques to help leaders connect emotionally with the vision. So over the 3 days we were together, we did a lot of storytelling, and people remembered why they worked there in the first place. They got reinvigorated. And that helped people kind of shed their armor for a while and stop trying to posture of, who's the cock of the walk, basically. And they started seeing each other as people again. Now, the second thing that she wanted to do was enhance cross-functional collaboration and communication. She wanted to get rid of all these silos. So here's what she did. She implemented monthly cross-functional team meetings. Now, this didn't come out of the 3-day retreat. This came from recommendations and debriefs afterwards. All right, now you've spent a week with your team afterwards. Let's figure out how we move forward with things that can actually be set in motion today. So cross-functional team meetings. That was huge. Now people who never spoke with each other had this great time in an offsite. Now they continued the momentum of meeting with each other on a regular basis. They also created a digital platform for sharing project updates and seeking cross-departmental input. So they tried a lot of apps. They tried Slack at first. They hated it. They tried some other thing. I'm not good with all these apps, but they tried a bunch of apps and they hated them. So they just created their own, and it was super simple. It was basically like having a one big whiteboard in the office that people just write ideas on, and that really helped. Now the challenges was that there was initial low engagement with this digital platform. Everyone thought it was a great idea, but nobody used it. So the adaptation that she had to overcome that challenge was that she appointed collaboration champions. So each department had a collaboration champion, and that person encouraged people to participate. So rather than Catherine having to, okay, get on the platform, each department had that person there that incentivized people to get on it. And it really took a lot of stress off of her. Now, the third thing was developing resilience and adaptability. So what did she do? She introduced adaptive leadership training for all managers. So she brought me back in, and I trained the next level down. So now there was a much larger idea of how leadership can be a lot different than we were brought up to believe it had to be. Then she launched a future scenarios workshop series to practice responding to potential changes. So I didn't have to come in for that. I just trained them how to do it, and they trained themselves. And they still do this. And it's wonderful because it also incorporates narrative. It incorporates storytelling. Now, the challenge was there was so much skepticism. So people saw this as role playing. And, role playing is a scary word, and they didn't want to do it. They saw them as imaginary scenarios. This isn't real. This isn't real. We won't do this. I don't know what accent that was. So there was a lot of skepticism there and had to be overcome. So how did she do it? Well, they incorporated real world examples into the scenarios. So rather than being imaginary, they used real world examples that were facing the business today or that would definitely be facing the business soon. That increased the relevance. So that's how she overcame the skepticism. So what were her key learnings? Patience is crucial. She realized that true alignment, culture change, it takes time. Again, if it could happen right away, it's not that hard. She learned to celebrate small wins while keeping the long-term vision in focus. Okay. Look, it looks like I wrote all these things down. Second, she learned to lead by example. Catherine found that consistently demonstrating the behaviors she wanted to see, such as cross-functional collaboration, adaptability, being vulnerable, that was more powerful than formal initiatives. She had realized that feedback was so much more important than she had realized it was. So she started regular check-ins with teams at all levels, and that helped her understand the real impact of changes, and it adjusted her approach big time. Feedback loops are one way to create a feedback culture. If you need more help with feedback, reach out to me. I'll show you some ways you can do that. She also balanced the push and pull. Okay, so while some initiatives needed to be strongly driven from the top, she found that creating space from bottom-up innovation and feedback was equally important. It is my belief that culture change starts at the top, it is invested in the bottom, and then it meets in the middle. That's how you truly change culture. She leveraged external support. So Catherine relied on her executive coach, who happened to be me, and a network of like peer CEOs from around Siemens to gain perspective and ideas when faced with challenges. So she wasn't alone. She didn't see this as she had to push this rock up this hill by herself. She realized there were a lot of other people that could help her. So the ongoing efforts that she exerted, she recognized that cultural transformation is a continuous journey. So here's what her next steps are, because it's ongoing. Her next steps is she's going to develop a comprehensive communication plan to regularly enforce the business unit's vision. She's going to create a mentoring program to foster cross-functional relationships and knowledge sharing. She's going to be integrating adaptability and collaboration metrics into performance reviews. And by sharing her ongoing journey, she hopes to inspire other leaders to embrace the challenges of cultural transformation, to understand that it's a gradual process. It requires consistent effort and flexibility, and it also requires a willingness to learn and adapt along the way. Because she's not just trying to change the culture of her team, she's trying to change the culture of the organization. And that's over 360,000 employees worldwide. But it takes time. So these next steps, these were the ones that weren't vital to start. If you try to do everything all at once, it's like saying, I want to get into shape. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start waking up at 6 a.m. I'm going to start eating this breakfast, this lunch, this dinner, and these snacks every day. I'm going to start going to the gym every day. I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to stop doing this. Next thing you know, you're trying to change your entire life overnight. And you wonder why it works for 3 days and then it's done. You got to find the things that take priority. So now we did step 1, step 2, and step 3. Let's go back because there's a 4th step. So we looked at defining your desired culture, developing key initiatives, identifying the gaps. Well, now step 4 is you've got to align systems and structures. So what organizational systems need to change to support the new culture? Sometimes you're fighting an uphill battle. You want to make changes, but your organization's culture and policy won't allow those changes. So what do you have to do? Are you going to be a disruptor, or are you going to let your plan get disrupted? You got to figure that out. And then how can you embed the desired behaviors into daily operations? So that's what you got to do. So with Catherine's example, she revised performance metrics to include innovation and collaboration. I wonder if I have a slide on that. Nope. She restructured teams to encourage cross-functional work. Okay, so by just moving people around, the cross-functional work happened by itself. Also, she found that the byproduct of that was people were much more innovative and people were much more excited about the work because they were working with different people. There was a change. New ideas flourished. Old biases went away. It was quite magical. And then finally, they adapted meeting structures to include time for sharing learning from failures. So their meetings weren't just about data, data, data. Their meetings were more narrative. Their meetings had more of a human aspect to them. Okay. So then after you've done all this, you've got to implement a roadmap for how this is going to work. Let's just stop for a second. Let's take a breath. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot because culture change doesn't happen overnight. Making an impact, I mean, you can make an impact in a minute, but to make a change, it takes time. So creating a roadmap, which is what I'm going to show you next, is essential. I drove cross country when I moved from Florida to Los Angeles. I was in Gainesville, Florida for 3 years, getting my master's degree at the University of Florida. And I got my master's later in life. And I drove cross country. So I packed a 26-foot Penske truck. I didn't go U-Haul. I went Penske. Shout out to Penske. Had a great experience. Everything I owned was in the back of that truck. My motorcycle was in the back of that truck. Everything. And I drove the 10 all the way across the United States. Well, that truck had a governor on the motor. On the motor, the thing wouldn't go more than like 62 miles per hour. And then going uphill, like in Texas, it wouldn't go more than 45 miles per hour. I didn't know that until I got the truck. Point is, I knew where I was going to stop ahead of time. I didn't want to be stuck at midnight or 1 in the morning on some, deserted road in the middle of Texas, not knowing where to spend the night with everything I owned in a truck. And so before I left, I used a road map to say, okay, here's where I'm going to stop. I'm going to drive for 8 hours this day. Contingency, if I'm feeling fresh and I want to drive for 10 hours, here's where I'll go. So plan A, I'm going to drive for 8 hours. Plan B, I'm going to drive for 10 hours. Plan C, I'm going to drive for 12 hours. And I had all that mapped out. Now, most of them were motels. I didn't make reservations. They were motels, but I knew where I was going to go. I also knew what are the long stretches where there are no gas stations. Because I was an adult. I had already made my mistakes in life. I had already run out of gas. I'd already done those things. I'd learned from my mistakes in the past. So if you're planning culture change, use this roadmap. Where do you want to stomp along the way? Where do you want to recharge your batteries? Where do you want to refill your tank? Where do you want to get out and stretch your legs? Where do you want to spend 2 nights and just relax and watch the sunset? That's part of your strategy. So let's take a look at this roadmap. All right. So creating a lasting change requires planning. Okay, so this is an outline of some key steps that you can take with specific examples. All right, and these are just examples. So one, you've got to communicate the vision. So here are 2 ways that you can communicate your vision. One is you could create a short video series featuring leadership and employees discussing the vision and its importance. Now, there are organizations that'll help you do that, or you can do it on your own. Now, a video series is fantastic, and all you need is this. You don't have to hire some great videographer. Have people do it on their phones. Just make sure they hold them this way, not this way. Easier to edit like this. Second, develop a vision roadshow where leaders visit different departments to discuss the vision and answer questions. It's like going on a campaign trail. You got to get out there. Don't wonder, I wonder what they're thinking. I wonder what my employees want. I wonder what my leadership would like to work on. Ask them. Go out there and find out. Okay, second thing is you got to build a coalition. So one of the things you can do is you can identify informal leaders from various levels of departments to form a culture change task force. Okay, I mean, that's a stupid name. Don't call it the culture change task force. I don't know what I was thinking, but identify those people. Find the people who believe in you. Find your advocates. Find your evangelists. Another thing you can do is you can conduct listening tours where leaders meet with small groups to hear concerns and ideas, and that builds trust through active listening. So it's similar to going on a tour to talk about your vision. The difference is you're not talking, you're listening. It's amazing what you can find out. Third thing, create short-term wins. Okay, so one of the things you can do is you can implement a quick wins challenge where teams submit ideas for improvements that can be implemented within 30 days. Okay, it's not an overhaul. It's not something that's going to have all the answers. Quick wins, and then it's like, wow, look at these. Look at all these ideas. It's amazing. And it's not about winning. It's about ideas. Another thing is you can create a collaboration spotlight. So in company communications, you can highlight successful cross-functional projects. So, I'm getting to that point where I say, we've all seen the movie Field of Dreams. I bet we haven't. So for those of you who are a little younger, there is a movie called Field of Dreams written by Kinsella that, what's his name? Batman. You all know who I'm talking about, was in. And Kevin Costner. And in it is that famous line, if you build it, they will come. But you see, what's happened is that's made people believe that's true. It's not true. It's not true. My father told me this when I was young. If you build it and then you tell everyone you ever meet that you built it, then one person will come. But then that person's going to tell somebody, and then that person's going to tell somebody, and that person's going to tell somebody. You've got to let people know. So why don't you throw the spotlight on somebody and you tell people about some success? Positive gossip. Next thing you do is you've got to sustain the change. So how do you do that? One thing you can do is you can establish quarterly pulse checks to gather feedback on on the change process and make necessary adjustments. You've got to consistently make adjustments. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. The next time you're in your car, even if you're driving somewhere that you drive, 5 times a day, who drives someplace 5 times a day, but you know what I mean. You're never driving in the right direction, ever, ever. You're constantly making adjustments on the steering wheel. You can't get into a car, take your hands off the wheel, hit the accelerator, and go straight. It doesn't work. The road turns. The one tire might have a little less air pressure and the alignment's off. The road is uneven. You're constantly making adjustments. You're constantly looking in your mirrors. Is that person too close? Is that person going to do the wrong thing? Is that my exit coming up? It's the same thing with the change and the initiatives within your organization. You have to make tiny adjustments because you're leading people. And every day, the people in your organization are changing and you're changing. So if you just stick with the policy that you created, it's going to go wrong. It's got to evolve. Another thing you can do is you can implement a culture story segment in team meetings where employees share experiences of living new values. So, hey, we've started this change. How's it been going? And you hear what people actually have to say. And that way you have a guide. Is this working well? Next, you've got to embed the new culture. You've worked so hard on the change. Well, now you got to embed it. So one of the things you can do is you can revise job descriptions and performance evaluations to include behaviors aligned with the new culture. Now, listen, that's easy for me to say. I am an organization of one. I get it. You got to go through HR, P&O, all those things. But if it's worth doing right. So put it in someone's job description. Take out things from their job descriptions that don't need to be there. And then the next thing you can do is you can create a culture ambassador program where employees are recognized for exemplifying the new cultural values. So you see a trend here. There's actions you can do and spotlights you can shine. Now remember, these are just examples, okay? The key here is to tailor these steps to your organization because your context and your culture is different than everything. So now finally, we're going to get into your commitments, your next steps. What can you do? Okay. And this is the end of this session. We're going to get to the end of this session. And then at the end of the session, I'm going to turn off the recording and I'm going to open it up for all of your questions. Okay. Because I realize you don't need your questions on a recording. Come on, who wants that? And also, I didn't sign any agreements with you. So, I'm not sharing my profits. You're going to say, that's my face. I want 10%. This is free. There's no profits. All right. So what are your next steps? There we go. Your commitments. I'm going to invite you to make a personal commitment. It's not a challenge. It's an invitation. And it's a commitment to leading cultural change. So 1, can you identify one specific action you'll take in the next week to start your cultural transformation journey? It's got to be an action because you can measure an action. You can measure whether or not you are doing it. And then you can measure the results. It's like going to the gym. You know if you're going to the gym. And if you track what you're doing at the gym, and then you look in the mirror on day 1, and on day 21 you look in the mirror, you don't see any difference. You don't feel any different. You look at the scale, that's no different. You're doing the wrong thing. Do something else. But at least you can judge the actions. 2, consider how you'll integrate adaptive, authentic, and narrative leadership in this action. Okay, so you're going to choose an action. Well, how are you going to use these 3 things that we've worked on over the last 3 weeks? How can you use those to support that action? If you're going to make a change, chances are, if you're going to make a change in your organization, chances are you need to change the way you lead. If you want your organization to behave differently, you need to behave differently. If you are moving from a senior director to a VP, or if you're moving from a VP to a C, you need to make changes. You can't keep doing the same thing. because you're moving on to something else. So what adaptive, authentic, or narrative changes can you make? And then the third part of this is determine how you'll measure the impact of this action. If you don't have a metric, if you don't have a target, you don't know if you were successful. Don't rely on, oh, I'll feel it. No, you probably won't. Okay. So write down your commitment. Write it down. And this is the first step towards catalyzing lasting change in your organization. But I urge you, write it down. Hold yourself accountable and put it somewhere where you see it. So this is it. All right. This is the end. So this is the end of our 4-week journey. This was a lot today. Okay. As I'm doing these, I realize I say okay a lot after some of my statements. So I'm gonna watch the video and say, do I say okay a lot? And now it's in my head. So now I have conscious what is it? Conscious incompetence. Great. So I'm gonna take a moment to reflect on what we've done so far, on what we've covered together. We've explored the art of adapting to change. We've developed and we've delved into the power of authentic and confident leadership. We've unlocked the potential of storytelling. And now we've integrated all of these elements into a comprehensive approach for catalyzing cultural transformation. And again, this is going to be recorded, or it's being recorded, and you can watch this again. I went through a lot of information. Now, your commitment to this process some of you have been on every one of these calls. And it's really inspiring to me. Each week you've shown up, you're ready to challenge your assumptions, you're ready to expand your perspectives, and most importantly, you're ready to grow as leaders. And so the energy and the insights that you've brought in the emails that you sent me and the questions you've asked me offline, the discussions we've had, they've been enriching experiences for me as well. And so I appreciate that. So thank you. And thank you for your time. Thanks for the openness. A lot of you have asked me some questions that I was like, wow, good on you. And then the dedication to becoming the kind of leader that you want to be, to bringing your organization to the level you want to see it rise to. But I've got to be clear, okay? I did it again. See, I've got to be clear, okay? I'm going to stop doing that. Let me be clear. What we have covered in these 4 weeks is literally the beginning. It is just scratching the surface. It is the tip of the iceberg. I call this the leadership renaissance because the Renaissance was a period of time of development and growth and pushing the limits and exploring how things can be different. And a comprehensive approach to transforming leadership in organizations is not going to be had in 4 webinars. This is more of a philosophy. It's a movement. And so for that comprehensive approach, it requires something more robust. So for those of you who are feeling ignited by what we've explored here, and if you're eager to dive in deeper, I'm going to invite you to consider how we might work together in the future. I have a couple more. Here we go. So how can I support you? There are 3 ways. 1, organizational engagement. So for those of you who know me, I offer tailored engagements. A lot of times they are on-site or, off-site programs. A lot of times it's me coming to you. Sometimes they're virtual, where I help organizations like yours implement the leadership renaissance. I help you implement what it is you're trying to achieve. And whether you're looking to transform your culture, whether you're looking to elevate your sales, whether you're looking to align your team around your mission, your vision, your values, or whether you're just looking to have a more human culture and less of a meeting culture, I'm here to guide you through that process. The second thing is speaking engagements. So if you'd like me to help you inspire your entire organization with these ideas, you can consider bringing me in as a speaker for your next company event or for a leadership retreat or anything like that. And then finally, executive coaching. So if you're seeking a more personalized guidance, I provide one-on-one executive coaching to help you navigate your leadership challenges and opportunities. I've just offered a second executive coaching opportunity with me where I'm doing mastermind groups. And so those are not one-on-one. They're small groups of 3 to 4 people who meet bi-weekly. So if you're interested in executive coaching, you can also reach out to me. The true measure of this program's success, it's not in what you've learned over these 4 weeks, it's what you do next. Are you going to do it? That's the question. So here's my challenge to you. In the next 24 hours, I want you to take one concrete action based on what you've learned. Just one. Many of you are familiar with my water challenge. My water challenge is very simple. Every night before you go to sleep, take a glass of water, put it next to your bed. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing I want you to do is drink that glass of water. That's it. For 30 straight days. You're all going to fail. And you're not going to fail because you don't want to rehydrate. You're not going to fail because you have a short attention span. You're not going to fail for any reason other than it's incredibly difficult to start a new habit. And it's even more difficult to break a habit. So if your habit is wake up and then scroll, that's hard to stop doing. So what I want you to do is take one concrete action based on what you've learned. Just pick one. Let it be your water challenge. It might be initiating a conversation with your organization about your organization's vision. It might be setting up a cross-functional team. It could be simply sharing a story that illuminates the change that you want to see. But do one thing. I mentioned this last week. Leadership isn't a title. You might be on a leadership team, but it's not a title, it's a choice. And it's a choice that you make every day. And you decide if you want to step up. You decide if you want to inspire people. You decide if you want to make a difference. But you won't know if you're doing any of those things unless you create metrics to see if you are inspiring, to see if you're making a difference. So you have it within you, the power to catalyze your entire organization. Tremendous positive changes are at the tip of your fingers. The world is waiting for you to lead if you want to. And I'm right there to help you. So I want to thank you one more time for diving in with both feet, for joining me on this journey, and for being present at this inaugural Leadership Renaissance. Thank you so much.